get
bad
it.
luck.
If you're, you know, a pop figure, you know what I mean, like in this world.
Like Marilyn Manson, who you do, and Jessica Simpson, and Sarah Palin, I guess. She's, but you can see why, if you do Sarah Palin, people might think, oh, he wants to make a statement about Sarah Palin or American politics.
I want to nail her, but...
Well, you got... If anyone's gonna, I think you got a good chance.
Yeah.
Imagine this: a Hollywood superstar like Will Smith, the clean-cut, family-friendly icon, secretly feeling threatened by a street-raised Detroit rapper like Eminem, all because one simple brag about keeping rap clean sparked a quiet feud that lasted for years. Insiders say Will's silence wasn't confidence, it was self-protection against a powerful industry-backed force. These were two men who dominated the late 90s in totally different ways. Will was the polished, profanity-free celebrity who made hip-hop safe for suburban homes. Eminem was the raw, unfiltered voice of the streets, turning pain into platinum hits and controversy into chart toppers. So what happens when those two worlds collide? What happens when a Grammy-winning smile meets a lyrical middle finger? We dug through old interviews, behind-the-scenes stories, and quiet industry whispers, and what we found isn't just a feud, it's a power struggle that shaped careers, revealed hidden fears, and left one of Hollywood's...
I stay in the studio, I keep working, you know. It doesn't matter if the movie did nothing or it did 100,000 million. It doesn't matter. Like, I stay working, just like how, you know, Rakim and Run DMC influenced me. And I can tell you how they did. You would have to ask.
It all began in 1998. Will Smith, fresh off the success of Men in Black and still glowing from his Fresh Prince days, walked into a Philadelphia studio where DJ Jazzy Jeff was recording with a then unknown rapper named Eminem. Jeff later said that Will listened to Eminem's verse and made a comment that would stick for years: "You're either going to be the biggest flop in the world or the biggest thing hip-hop has ever seen." Then he walked out. To most people it probably sounded like a casual remark or maybe even a strange compliment, but to Eminem it felt like a challenge. And when you're a hungry rapper from Detroit's 8 Mile, where every word matters and respect is everything, a challenge is something you answer, not ignore. Fast forward to February 2000 at the 42nd Grammy Awards. Will Smith stood on stage accepting the award for Best Rap Solo Performance for Will 2K. In his speech he made sure to mention, "I never harmed nobody in none of my records, I never used no profanity in none of my records, and still I managed to get up here." The crowd cheered, the media loved it, but
sometimes it's dark and, you know, other things, but sometimes it's very funny. The new single is very funny, and you have a firm grasp of popular culture. You kind of, I think the word that young people use is diss. You diss some people in the new single.
Some.
Yeah. Now, do you have any feedback? Do you ever meet those people? Do they ever contact you and let you know what they think about it? Or?
By that time Eminem wasn't just another rapper to break through, he was a storm. His debut album, the Slim Shady LP, had dropped the year before, selling millions and turning him into one of the most feared and talked about figures in music. His lyrics were violent, his delivery was intense, and his rise felt unstoppable. So when Will Smith stood on the Grammy stage and basically crowned himself the clean and moral example of hip-hop, it wasn't just a statement, it was a spark. And Eminem, who never backed down from a fight, answered in the only way he knew how, through his music. Just 3 months later the real Slim Shady was released, and right in the middle of the song Eminem struck back, "Will Smith don't gotta cuss in his raps to sell records, well I do, so fim and F you too." The line was harsh, raw, and impossible to ignore. Radio stations scrambled to censor it, parent groups demanded apologies, but the streets loved it. For the first time someone had punched through Will Smith's carefully polished image, not treating him like a legend but like a target.
Had called out the carefully constructed image of Will Smith, not as a legend, but as a target.
You know, people are going to pass judgment. They're going to say what they want to say, and they're going to make their own conclusions or whatever, you know. And they're more than welcome to do.
4. Now this is where things really get interesting, because this wasn't just about lyrics anymore, this was about power. Will Smith had Hollywood behind him, major studios, powerful publicists, and a spotless reputation that made him the golden boy of entertainment. But Eminem had something different, and in some ways something even stronger. He had Dr. Dre, the most influential producer in hip-hop, a man who didn't just create hits, but built empires. He had Proof, his Detroit brother, who made sure Eminem was respected in the streets, and by 2002 he had 50 Cent, a rising superstar backed by a loyal fanbase ready to ride for him at any moment. This wasn't a simple rap beef anymore, it was two machines colliding. According to insiders, Will Smith understood the message quickly. After the real Slim Shady came out, word spread that a private meeting took place either at Sony Music or Columbia Pictures, where Will was strongly advised to stay quiet. No response, no diss track, no interviews, just silence, because by Then Eminem wasn't just a rapper, he was a full-scale movement, and crossing him didn't mean trading clever bars, it meant stepping into a world with different rules, bigger stakes and consequences that went far beyond music charts. But let's rewind, because this tension didn't start overnight, it had been building long before that Grammy speech back in the late 90s. Will Smith was the face of hip-hop's clean mainstream crossover. His 1997 album Big Willie Style went diamond, over 10 million copies sold without a single curse word. He was the rapper parents trusted, the guy who could headline a blockbuster movie and drop a radio-friendly hit at the same time. Eminem was the complete opposite, raw, controversial, unfiltered. His music wasn't just explicit, it was a direct challenge to the system. So when Will bragged about not needing profanity to succeed, it wasn't just pride to Eminem, it felt like a shot at everything he stood for: his style, his story, his entire identity. Because while Will was selling records by being
I wanted to pull back from the spotlight for a little while, just, I guess, kind of reassess my whole career. You know what I mean? I ended up in rehab in 2005 and, just kind of wanted to, like I was trying to figure out where I was going. You know what I mean? Like where I was going in my personal life and career-wise and everything, like what I was going to do.
Now, let's talk about the aftermath, because this is where the story takes a darker turn. After the real Slim Shady exploded, Will Smith did something unexpected.
5. Now let's talk about the aftermath, because this is where the story takes a darker turn. After the real Slim Shady blew up, Will Smith did something no one expected. He went completely silent, no response, no interview clapbacks, no subtle jabs, nothing. And in hip-hop, where almost every diss gets answered, that silence said more than words ever could. Some people believed it was a smart PR move, others thought it was fear, because by 2000, Eminem wasn't just a rapper with clever punchlines, he was a rapper backed by a powerful machine. Dr. Dre's Aftermath Entertainment wasn't just a record label, it was a fortress, and when 50 Cent joined the team in 2002, that fortress became even more intimidating. Meanwhile, Will Smith shifted fully into Hollywood. Ollie in 2001, Men in Black 2 in 2002, Bad Boys 2 in 2003. His music career slowly faded into the background, almost like he stepped away from the fight before it truly began, and the more Will pulled back, the bigger Eminem became. The Marshall Mathers LP shattered records, selling more than 1 million copies in its first week and dominating the charts for years. The Eminem Show followed in 2002, cementing his status as one of the greatest rappers of all time. Meanwhile, Will's later albums barely caused a ripple, but that brings us to the question people have asked for more than 20 years: was Will Smith's silence a choice or survival? Because this wasn't just two artists trading bars, this was two completely different worlds colliding. Will Smith had Hollywood agents, publicists, studio executives, and a carefully managed public image to protect. Eminem had the loyalty of the streets, respect, momentum, and a reputation that made people think twice before crossing him. There were even whispers, unconfirmed behind-the-scenes talk, that Eminem moved with a level of protection and support most fans never saw, not just bodyguards but a network around him that made sure he stayed untouchable during his rise. Meanwhile, Will Smith was attending red carpets, hosting award shows. Shaken.
Big news here. The Academy Board of Governors banning Will Smith from all Academy events for 10 years, a decade.
And just when you think the story ends, when it seems like the Cold War between them stayed quiet, new moments made people wonder if the tension ever truly disappeared. Because in 2022, when Will Smith walked onto the Oscar stage and slapped Chris Rock, the internet exploded with comparisons. One question kept popping up everywhere: would he have done that to Eminem? And almost everyone answered the same way: no, not because of fear, but because Eminem's presence in hip-hop was different. He wasn't just a rapper, he was a force, someone whose reputation demanded a level of respect that few dared to challenge. As we dig deeper into their story, the power, the fear, the strategy behind both careers, one thing becomes clear: this was never just about a diss track, it was about two men representing two completely different versions of success. One of them fought loudly, the other survived quietly, and that raises a question: at what cost? Because in Hollywood, silence isn't just the lack of sound, silence is a tool, sometimes even a weapon. In the years after that Grammy moment, Will Smith's silence spoke louder than any response could. Some critics argued that while Eminem battled his rivals, Will's Hollywood world protected him from direct confrontation, turning quiet into a strategic retreat that hid something more fragile underneath. The reality was this: Will wasn't just avoiding a rap clash, he was navigating an industry where one wrong move could damage the carefully built image he depended on. And Eminem during that same era wasn't just a sharp-tongued artist, he was rising with strong professional alliances from Detroit studios to Los Angeles boardrooms that amplified his influence across the industry. According to entertainment insiders and commentators, award shows in the early 2000s sometimes felt like silent battlegrounds. A glance, a joke, an offhand comment, any of it could shift public perception or reveal tension simmering beneath the surface, because by 2002 everything had changed. Let's talk about the patterns, because they're hard to ignore. After The Real Slim Shady was released, Will Smith never mentioned Eminem again, not in interviews, not in music, not even casually. Meanwhile, Eminem kept rising. The Marshall Mathers LP shattered records, The Eminem Show locked in his legacy, and Will, he shifted completely into acting, almost as if the music world had become a place he didn't want to step into anymore. Hey, race where it gets interesting. While Eminem built a career fueled by conflict and controversy, Will's path went in the opposite direction. His later albums didn't carry the same impact, and his once flawless public image began to show cracks, especially after huge public moments like the 2022 Oscars incident. On top of that, media attention around personal challenges and rumors added even more pressure to the persona he had worked so hard to maintain. Through all of this, Eminem stayed quiet too. But his silence felt different. It wasn't retreat, it was dominance, because in hip-hop, the artist who doesn't need to respond is often the one who already won the narrative. Now let's connect the dots. The tension between Will and Eminem didn't simply vanish, it changed shape. Industry watchers believe it softened into a long-running Cold War, echoed not through direct shots but through subtle speeches, interviews, and lyrical winks. A rivalry built on power, image, and two completely different definitions of success. Take the 2000 DMAs for example. Will Smith won Best Male Video for Miami and once again highlighted his clean approach to music. To all my fans out there, I never harmed nobody in none of my records, I never used no profanity, and still I managed to get up here. The audience loved it, the media praised it, but backstage the energy reportedly shifted. To some in the industry it felt like another quiet jab, another moment positioning Will as hip-hop's moral authority, and for those who followed the dynamics closely it was another reminder that Eminem's camp was paying attention. Whether
Eminem doubles down, and I say doubled down because Eminem has kind of sent shots at Diddy before, but on this, he really doubles.
By that point, Eminem wasn't just a rapper anymore, he was a symbol, a figure who had survived some of the toughest moments in the industry and built alliances with people who commanded real respect. His reputation stretched far beyond music, and everyone knew it. Will Smith, meanwhile, was still living inside Hollywood's rulebook, a world where conflict gets smoothed over with PR statements, contracts, and carefully crafted appearances. But this is where the story darkens, because while Will was hosting award shows and leading blockbuster films, people in the industry whispered that Eminem was making moves that strengthened his influence behind the scenes, not aggressively but strategically. There were rumors, never confirmed, that certain groups in Los Angeles expected artists to check in as a sign of respect before entering their territory. Some insiders claimed Eminem understood the politics of the industry well enough to navigate it smoothly. Whether true or not, those stories only added to the myth of his untouchable status. At the same time, Will Smith's public image began to face pressures he had never dealt with before. Media commentary, personal controversies, and a wave of sensational claims created a picture of a man struggling to hold together the spotless persona he had built for decades. Regardless of what was true and what wasn't, the perception was clear: Will's world was shifting, and through all of it, Eminem remained unshaken in his world. Respect wasn't about smiles or speeches. It
He doesn't care what he says offends people. It's classic Slim Shady.
Will Smith had Hollywood, a system built on control, polished image, and carefully crafted narratives, a place where anything that didn't fit the brand could be softened, redirected, or quietly pushed out of sight. Eminem had something completely different. He had the raw edge of hip-hop culture behind him. He had Dr. Dre, a producer who understood not just music but influence. He had Proof, his closest friend, someone who helped solidify Eminem's credibility in Detroit's toughest creative circles, and by 2002 he had 50 Cent, a rising powerhouse with a massive following of his own. This wasn't just a rap disagreement, it was a clash between two empires operating under two different value systems. In that world, Will's silence didn't just look strategic, it looked like survival, because stepping into Eminem's arena wasn't just about exchanging lyrics, it meant entering a space with different rules, sharper edges, and pressures that didn't exist in Hollywood. And Will understood that. But there's another layer to this story. One people often overlook what if Will's silence wasn't simply about fear, what if it was about recognizing something deeper, because this tension didn't happen in a vacuum, it unfolded during a time when hip-hop itself was dividing into two lanes. Lane 1, the polished brand-friendly Hollywood-approved version that Will represented, Lane 2, the raw, unfiltered, unapologetic version that Eminem embodied, and in that split Will's career began to shift. His music slowly faded from the spotlight, his movies kept coming. But his public image grew more complicated as controversies and personal struggles piled onto the narrative. Meanwhile, Eminem kept climbing. Where others avoided controversy, he turned it into fuel. Where others backed away, he pushed harder. And every time Will stayed quiet, every time he chose not to respond, the message felt louder. He wasn't just avoiding.
It was my man. This is probably irreparable.
10. Now let's fast forward to today, because the echoes of this decades-long Cold War are still being felt in 2022 when Will Smith walked onto the Oscar stage and slapped Chris Rock. The internet exploded, but the real question wasn't about Chris Rock, it was about Eminem. If Will was willing to lash out at a comedian over a joke, why had he never responded to one of the most famous diss tracks in hip-hop history? According to industry insiders, the answer is simple: Eminem wasn't just another rapper, he was a force backed by a machine that even Hollywood couldn't touch. In that world, silence wasn't weakness, it was the only move left. And hey, race, what makes this story even more fascinating, while Will's career has been shaped by comebacks, reinventions, and public controversies, Eminem's legacy has only grown stronger. He's now widely respected, a Hall of Famer in the world of hip-hop. Will, on the other hand, has continued to navigate public scrutiny, still facing the long shadow of that Oscar night and the ongoing whispers around his past. Looking back at this Cold War, one thing is clear: this wasn't just about a diss track, it was about two men representing entirely different versions of success. One fought openly, the other chose survival, and the question remains, at what cost? Because in Hollywood, silence can be just as loud as a diss track. Sometimes what's left unsaid is even more dangerous. So hey, race, the real question for you: if Will Smith had responded to Eminem back in 2000, would his career have ended differently? Would he have lost it all, or proven he was more than Hollywood's safe bet? Drop a comment below and let us know what you think, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, because we're just getting started. Stay tuned, stay curious, and remember, in the world of fame, the real battles aren't fought on stage, they're fought in the shadows. And trust us, you don't want to miss what happens next.